Hello and welcome back to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. I'm Andy Green.
I'm Felix Schultz, and you've been spilling spicy beans, Andy Green.
Yep. We had the lovely opportunity to catch up with one of our favourite and most recurring guests of the podcast.
Platinum frequent flyer status.
Yeah, he's up there with the most OT miles. Of course, we're talking about Nicholas Biebuyck.
Yeah, we had Nicholas back on, but the first time in person for you, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, cool to finally meet him. I felt like I knew him at that point. It was quite weird. Felt very familiar.
Yeah, nice guy, really nice guy. What did you chat about, Andy?
Well, we're going to play that recording. You were kind of sidelines for once. Now you know how I feel when you went away to Geneva. But
it felt good and cruisy, let's be honest.
Yeah, kicked back. So, context. TAG Heuer had Nicholas out for a series of events. A couple of them were at Dutton's, which is a car garage here in Melbourne. I think we've probably talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
So after hours, before the event started, I chatted with Nicholas, talked all about I think more generally TAG Heuer's presence in Australia and a new release, which is now not 2 days old or 3 days old.
Yep, we're allowed to talk about it. Unless they suddenly move the embargo date.
It's lifted just like that. The new skipper from TAG Heuer. So that is the chat in a nutshell. It was very entertaining and interesting. There's a little bit of industry goss, so keep an ear out. Not too much, but just a little bit.
Just a little dusting of spice. But we've had a busy week, which was why last week we didn't have an episode, because we were too many nights out seeing the people.
I know, it was tiring. We also had Piaget. We hosted an event at their Chadstone boutique.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Altiplano, ultimate concept watch.
Yep.
There for people to try on. 2 mil thick.
Did you try it on in the end?
Yeah.
What did
Terrifying
you think
to hold.
It's unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah, like give me a platinum, Rolex or a precious metal Patek or anything, or complicated whatever. But I don't know. It just feels it's airy.
The old meat hooks would break it. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, and then Gaspard, the country manager, just kind of picks it up and, shows how tough the Cobalt Alley is by trying to fold it in half, which it held together. But that was really cool to see because you don't see those super often.
Yeah, ever. You know what else you don't see often?
What's that?
The actual watches from Only Watch.
Oh, you want to get into that?
Did you have something else?
Yes.
What did you want to talk about?
Well, so I wore a Polo S on the rubber strap.
Okay. Elastomere.
Pretty comfortable.
Okay.
Pretty nice watch. Got a lot of compliments. Posted a few pics.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be an interesting watch for the people and for the times. The other piece that we have to talk about before we move on, that gem set gold watch. I forget the name. Was it the Celebration?
I think it's a Limelight. The Limelight Gala is what I think of it as, but it could be called something else. Let me check.
Limelight Gala. It's gem set, gold dial, gold bracelet. They actually had one there with the rainbow kind of gem setting.
Yeah, God, look at this. Oh, look how hot it is. Wow,
you're showing the screen that no one can see, but
yeah, I'll put it up on my Instagram. So
Felix posted a picture of it. Didn't The Weeknd wear one recently?
Maybe. That's a thing to follow up. I think that's, I would, if it was a bit bigger in the case, I would really wear that.
Yeah, really fun. Really, really cool to see. Anyway, Only Watch, Felix.
Yes, Only Watch. It happens every 2 years. It's a charitable auction held out of Monaco, I believe. Muscular dystrophy is the cause. Watches are the noise. I was trying to come up with like a rhyme there, but I didn't. So they recently announced how many lots? Let's see, 62 or something. Not quite all of them, because a few of the big dogs are holding back their releases until a more opportune moment. The auction happens in November, in auction season. It's being done with Christie's, I believe. And all sort of proceeds go to charity. And we picked our little top early runner pieces out of it because it seemed like a fun thing to do.
A few ground rules for Only Watch. It is Christie's.
Sure.
They obviously have to be a unique piece.
Yep.
Which makes it special.
Only Watch.
Rolex never put a watch in because I guess they don't do unique pieces, but Shooter do.
Yep.
Patek do because I guess Rolex doesn't.
And maybe Patek just loves some charity.
Maybe. And the price, the estimates are always retail of the watch as if it wasn't unique and it was just a regular kind of production piece.
Yep.
And that's for tax purposes. So in some states and countries and parts of the world, not Australia, but if you buy something at a charity auction, you basically can write off the difference between the estimate and the price you paid.
Sure.
And receive a physical product, which is the main thing. Here, if we bought and here being Australia, if you buy something at a charity auction, if you actually get goods or something in return or a service, it's not considered a donation, so you can't deduct it. So that is why you'll see a watch that has an estimate of 40,000 Swiss francs and it goes for $500,000, and you're like, oh, these estimates are way off. Anyway, what were your three favorites?
That was some accounting knowledge just dropped, y'all.
Yeah, well, after this has been my fourth or fifth only. This is probably my fifth only watch that I've paid attention to.
Yeah,
fifth cycle.
Okay, so I've picked a couple of watches. First, shout out to Chris Hall from the Fifth Wrist, another OT frequent flyer in references, if not interviews. He did a very, very good and, dare I say, better comprehensive write-up than we're about to do on his newsletter a couple of weeks ago. You should check it out. Also, I'll link up a piece that I had handing over at Revolution that sort of does a quick rundown of all the lots so you can see what we're talking about.
A very nifty list of them all.
Yeah, nifty. All right, my first pick, no surprises, the Bulgari Octofinissimo Tourbillon Marble.
Yep, good shout. It's a cool watch.
I thought initially it was made of marble. It's not.
It looks like it's made of marble. It's not? No,
it's a veneer.
Right.
So, which is perhaps even more impressive that they have got, they have applied a 0.6 millimeter thick layer of marble over the entire watch. So that's over 120 facets on the case, I think, alone.
How?
Lots of very finely cut pieces and glue. Isn't that cool?
Wow. I had no idea.
Because I don't think the marble would be structurally strong enough,
right,
to hold together. Because there's so many sort of grains and points in there.
Okay, that seems like a lot of work.
Estimate 150 to 250,000 francs. It's going to be one of the top lots, no doubt. The press release has some ridiculous narrative. This is my favorite thing, ridiculous press releases about the marble evoking this alpine pass between Italy and Switzerland, symbolizing the bridge between Italian design and Swiss watchmaking. I don't care about any of that. It's just ridiculous. It's perhaps the most over-the-top and Bulgari octo thing I've ever seen. It's great.
I mean, it pays homage to the significant history of the material used.
So the next one, this is cool, and this is what I really like about Only Watch. I had never heard of this brand before, but it is very, very cool. Barbier Mueller. Have you heard of Barbier Mueller?
I have now.
So they are, as it stands currently, the only watchmaker to have a collaboration with FP Journe.
Really?
So that watch that we're looking at on our screen, the Mosaic 2, is rocking a Journe movement. And that's because this watch is all about the case and the dial. The movement is an afterthought in something. Well, it's not an afterthought, but they popped a third party in. They have made this with a bunch of Genevan métiers d'art specialists. So they've enameled, I think Champlevé enameled using hard stones and other things.
The Champlevé, yeah.
The case and the dial, which is in a lotus flower, which is it's quite an attractive design. And I just think it's a really nice watch.
It's fascinating. It's the first collaboration with Journe.
It's cool, isn't it?
Barbier Mueller must know someone. Probably.
Yeah, I'm sure. So Eric Giraud designed it. Le Cadreniers de Genève and Le Bottiers de Genève. Yeah. 41 million, over 1,000 hours of work in the dialing case. Finally. I like this because, again, ridiculous. and someone over at Heuer is not afraid of the Walt Disney legal team,
Mm-hmm.
the Space-Time Blade for Only watch, which is
Yeah,
essentially
so that's not a fish?
what?
It's not official?
No. It is a Space-Time blade, which may or may not look like a lightsaber.
Yeah, right. Space time.
So basically, it's what appears to be a long tube blade with a sort of a handle. It looks a lot like a lightsaber with like a Dixie clock in the middle, which just looks cool. I think if you've got the $45,000 to $80,000 or sorry francs estimate, you've got enough money to have a stupid man toy watch clock.
Oh, looks that would be just absolutely awesome to have in an office.
How good would it be?
Space time blade.
Space-Time blade. I just
Laser
like
blade.
the audacity of that.
I mean, you've met the guys from Biebuyck. They're
And I'm
a
sure
little
they're also
intimidated.
smart enough to
I'm a
know
little
what,
intimidated.
where to walk on that line. Andy, what about you? What are your picks?
I've got three. The first one that I shook away from the lot is the Shepard LUC 1860 only watch.
Love it.
I mentioned I liked the 1860 when it was announced at Watches and Wonders.
Yep.
I like the only watch edition even more because it's got a lovely sort of ice green gold tone dial.
Is that pistachio?
I would call it pistachio. I'm not sure what the press release calls it,
I
but
can
it's got
tell
a
you.
lovely movement. Same movement as the sort of regular one. 25 to 35,000 Swiss francs, which is what the 1860 sort of retails for. Maybe expensive, maybe not. It's just a really elegant, nice watch. Like I think LUC is a bit slept on still. Like I just don't think it's fully appreciated, and maybe its time's coming. But I reckon this watch is just absolutely lovely.
I can tell you, it's an ice green toned dial, symbolizing the fragility of icebergs.
There you go. Lucent steel case, which is the Chopard ting. So yeah, I think maybe one of the things is the steel watch at that sort of retail price normally, maybe a smidge, might be a smidge, but I think it is really nice. I like it. I'm a big fan. Next up, Baltic, Felix.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a perpetual calendar.
Yes.
With a, how do I describe it? It's like a very, very purple
Aubergine.
dial. Yeah, it's aubergine, but it's really high. It's really vibrant. It's kind of... Oh, and the other interesting thing here is it's a Baltic Experiments timepiece.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's different. I don't know if that's
It
the
is.
name of their cool prototype division.
I can tell you what that is in a second once you tell me why you like it.
I like the dial. I like that it's like a really complicated timepiece from Baltic who, really made their mark doing kind of more entry-level and affordable, yet high-quality watches. And I like that they've sort of come out with something that's just completely different to what they normally do.
So estimate on that is 20 to 30,000 francs. I think this is really, really clever because what a lot of watch brands do is sort of seed things for the future as well. So Baltic Experiments this is them launching their Premier line.
There you go.
Because they've had wild success, which is sort of must be frustrating if you're selling watches around, $2,000.
Yep.
Because you could be making mad money.
If the brand's strong enough.
Is their way to do it. They've worked with Voucher, and they've developed this new calendar module, and they can now have Baltic Experiments line watches and move upscale while still, not having to raise the prices on their core offering and not piss people off.
Yeah, I mean, cater to sort of that high end because Baltic really has garnered fans in every segment of the watch market. Like I think we own them. You've got one. Everyone, we just love it. Like it is a really lovely brand. So
What's next, Andy?
I'm happy to see that. Okay, surprising, absolutely no one. My last pick is the Tudor Prince Chronograph 1.
No, I'm not surprised. But why? Why, Andy? Tell me.
I'm glad you're sitting
you're
down,
bidding on it.
Felix. It's a throwback to the old chronograph, Tudor Prince from like the 70s. Big block chronograph, you might know it as, in full yellow gold. Except this time it's not powered by, an ETA movement or a Vajou from, I should say back then, it's powered by a in-house caliber, obviously, that we see across the Tudor range today. Should have sort of shown off a little bit of precious metal with that Black Bay gold that kind of exists out there in the world. This is on a bracelet, which I think is very, very cool. Black bezel, black dial, and then it's just pure gold. Like this thing is just
Gold.
I don't know. It's a tricky
Yellow
thing.
gold too.
Like you think if this was a retail watch, they'd put 25 to 35, thousand Swiss francs, basically the same price as a gold Rolex. Would you buy a golden Tudor, in-house movement, Tudor quality, which is fantastic? Would you pay that money retail if this was, if a spin on this was sold?
And I don't think that's unreasonable because again, Tudor is one of those brands that sort of uses it to tease and then release. The thing I find most interesting about it, Andy, is that it says Prince chronograph on the dial.
Yes. Yeah, throwback.
Well, I mean, or bringing it back.
Maybe. I mean, the thing is the current Black Bay chronograph sells really well.
But they've got Black Bay Chrono, and then they've got, which is a weird sort of dive design mashup, and then they've got the Heritage Chrono, which might have been discontinued.
Don't see those anymore, do you?
No.
And
so I reckon there's space for like a pure sports chrono that, I mean, maybe
a slightly smaller case. Maybe it's 39.
Yeah, it's not like it's going to eat into the Daytona's appeal, is it?
No. This is a real test to see, if you could get past the Tudor on the dial and spend, big bucks on a solid gold Tudor. But I mean, this is going to be crazy. This will be one of the top lots as well. I think.
Yeah. Patek and Tudor are going to be the big ones.
It looks absolutely epic. Oh yeah, special
shout out. $1 million plus. Do you reckon it'll crack $1 million?
Yeah. I'd say. Initially, I was thinking 900,000 US, but watches have gotten really weird.
Yep.
Especially since the last only watch, so I'd see this going a bit bonkers. We forgot to mention there's a theme to the. There's a theme. There's a theme to the kind of auction or a guide you were saying.
Yeah.
Around
the colours. They give a colour sort of. You don't have to follow it. But I think the colours this year are sort of like a rainbow, which explains why some of the other lots are just flat out bonkers.
Yeah, some took it really kind of. They'd met the brief. Is there anything else that gets a special shout out?
I'm just scrolling here. I mean, there's lots.
The Louis Vuitton.
The Tiffany bird on a rock is a big flex.
The Louis Vuitton Einstein.
TAG Heuer. Did you talk about the TAG Heuer with Nicholas?
Not on the rec.
Okay.
Yeah, it was offline.
Yeah, the Einstein. That's interesting. Chris Hall noted that whoever owns, so it's the Louis Vuitton, their tambour with the sort of automata, and it's got that iconic feature of Einstein with his tongue out. He has noted that whoever owns that IP in the past has been particularly zealous with pursuing it.
Interesting.
And he's like, I wonder if Louis Vuitton's done their due diligence.
I mean, yeah, you think. So I want to ask you something about this watch.
Hang on, let me scroll up to it.
Well, the tambour, because it didn't make our news break before. The tambour had a bit of a relaunch.
Yep.
Last week.
Yes.
A lot of big names in the watch industry flew out.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's saying it's the next big thing.
Yep.
I don't know that it is.
I was very bullish on it early when I saw it come up. I'm like, hey, this looks really good because I like it. It's got a lot of things that I like. It's sporty, it's steel, it's got Ecopod vibes, it's not too derivative, but it's its own thing. I didn't realize how much money it cost.
It's like 20,000 US?
Yeah, and there's like limited production and they've,
I don't know, they axed 80% of the collection. Everyone writing about this watch, I don't think any of them could name more than 1% the tambour line. Like, I just don't think.
I've always liked that one, the one with the regatta flags, the world title.
Fine, you wouldn't buy it.
There's the tambour Urban Diver. That's staying because it's current.
Yeah, I don't like. It's fine. It's a fine enough watch, but I'll reserve my final judgment until if I ever see one.
Watch conglomerates be watch conglomerating.
But I don't. Yeah, but this whole it's the next big thing. How amazing is this? Wow, it's groundbreaking. I don't know that it is. I don't. That's the thing I don't like. It's just, I feel like they've called in every favour they could to really, and it reminds me of the Octa Finismo when it came out. I was like, this is going to be the next.
owned by the same group, and they're both
Funny
holidays.
that, yes.
Or the Chronomaster Sport, maybe.
Yeah, it's
Or
that
the Heuer 2 movement. It's weird. Weird, Andy.
weird how it works. Yeah, it's everything's going to be the next big thing, and then it sort of never
weird.
is.
Marketing departments of giant luxury companies know how to do their jobs.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, yeah, the impressive thing is the coverage. I mean,
It's like they're paying for it, Andy.
but yeah, I mean, good call. It's so Jean Arnaud's moved across to be the watch director, and he sort of had the sense to, he's a sensible fella. Apparently, he's just come in and said, "Get rid of all of this."
Well, I mean, yeah,
this
I mean, they're doing all
noise.
the other stuff with Daniel Roth and Gerald Gentlebrand. So, I mean, there is an air of something going on there,
which is and it does coincide with sort of this influence and involvement. So you can probably accredit them to going, guys, get rid of this stuff, focus on this.
I got one more thing, Andy, before we get on to Nicholas. There have been a lot of rumours going around. I can confirm that one of those rumours is definitely 100% not. There's no grounds to this whatsoever.
Yep.
At artemstraps.com, artem.straps on Instagram, makers of the loopless sailcloth, is looking to be acquired by a major hard luxury manufacturer.
I can see the new Tambor with its 40mm case.
Tambor's got no lugs. Wouldn't work.
They'd make an integrated end piece.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, they're definitely not going to happen. It's definitely not.
That. Get it on the Tudor oyster prints.
Oh, that would good. Oh, with green and the gold. Okay. Yeah, let's make that happen. Anyway, yeah, Artem straps, still excellent. The loopless in green. Check it out. Put it on your favourite watch.
Yep, it's looking great on your Grand Seiko. Artem straps have been supporting us, on and off for quite some time. So make sure you check them out. Support our friends because they support us. Felix, let's time travel back to last week. Dutton's garage. Nicholas, Andy, Felix off to the sidelines chatting.
Let's do it.
Engines revving. Here we go.
Welcome to The Edge, a podcast by TAG Heuer. I'm your host, Nicholas Biebuyck.
That's a good takeover. He's done it. He's taken over. I'm with none other than TAG Heuer's Heritage Director, Nicholas Biebuyck, here at Melbourne's Dutton Garage, which is an icon. Why are we here, Nicholas?
Well, we're here because I had a very kind friend who introduced me to the owners at Dutton, and we managed to find a good way of getting an event squeezed in, which was nice. No, I mean, really, it's a pleasure for me to be down in Australia. It's a country I've loved since I first visited whilst I was based in Hong Kong. Of course, as a Brit, it's nice to come to a country with the same language as I speak, so that's always a pleasure. But what's brought me down from Switzerland to Australia is really the celebration of the Carrera 60th anniversary. As we know, 2023 celebrates the 6th decade of the existence of the Carrera, introduced in 1963. So wanted to share some stories and maybe give a sneak peek of some upcoming stuff as well.
Amazing. So yeah, Dutton, you're right. They don't normally do events, so you must have gone straight to the top to be able to organise this.
Yeah, I can't remember how it came up actually, but a good friend of mine is a photographer who focuses on cars and, famously models in cars, isn't he?
Oh.
Actually, shout out to Rio Cam. He's a bit of a legend, does these famous pictures of these models with legs sticking out of cars. And he'd done an exhibition at Dutton, I think, earlier in the year.
Yep.
And when I saw him doing it, I mean, as you might know, I have a great passion for cars, and Dutton has built this amazing international reputation, not only for the private collection of the owners, but also the fact that they can handle some really, really spectacular stuff. So when I saw Rio was down here, I messaged him and said, it's really impressive that you're doing this exhibition. Could you link me with the team here? And yeah, he put me in contact with...
Amazing. So Carrera GT F40 right at the front of the shop today, of the entrance. What's your choice?
The funny one is the one in the middle that looks like, most people would walk past this and say, yeah, it's cool that it's an Aston Martin, but it's a 177, so a particularly rare and unusual
Pretty rare
variation. I mean, for me, I've been lucky to have some time in an F40, and when I was in Monaco for the Formula One, I went out driving with a friend who's got a Carrera GT, so I've had a bit of time around them, and honestly, two absolutely iconic cars from two absolutely iconic manufacturers. Push comes to shove, I think it's an impossible decision to make.
I think the brand decision is probably
Carrera
GT.
Course. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah. I mean, what am I talking about? The obvious decision. I mean, it's funny that we raise it because, of course, Both brands I love implicitly. Porsche is obviously the more logical choice in many ways. The 911 is the perfect all-round car. Obviously, there's this magnetic romance, this magical nature of Ferrari. So yeah, tricky stuff.
It's a tough question.
Carrera GT is a special thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned you brought some stuff over to show everyone tonight and over the last week in Australia. What have you snuck over in your carry-on?
So I didn't hand carry anything because we know of the tricky technicalities of bringing watches across borders. But yeah, I mean, in advance we shipped a selection of pieces.
Okay.
So in advance of Carrera's 60th, we knew, I knew that there would be a lot of demand on watches from the museum.
Yep.
So what we decided to do was curate these sets of 5 watches. We exhibited them at Watches and Wonders, and we built kind of replica sets for all the different markets. I think we did 12 in the end, and every single one consisted of a pre-Carrera, either a reference 2444 or 3336, a 2447 or 3647, the first generation of Carrera, then a 3147 Dato, an 1153, the first automatic chronograph Carrera, and then of course the iconic gold reference 1150 ACHN. So we have those 5 pieces on display downstairs to show the chronology of the early history of the Carrera, and then we also have 5 additional pieces showing more of the contemporary history. And then I've also brought along, so people can lovingly fondle them during dinner tonight, the reference 7754 Skipper and the another reference 1158 CHN. And on my wrist I'm wearing the 2447 NST to kind of benchmark against the new reverse pounded glass box.
New and old. Okay, before we get to the Skipper, because I want to bring that up. 50 years of Carrera. What do you wish? Or what's one of the most interesting things you kind of can share or that you've learned through kind of really diving into that sort of history?
I got given the great task of writing the book for the Carrera 60th anniversary, so I ended up spitting out around 20,000 words on the topics. So for me, it was fascinating because, of course, there's many stories that we know very well.
Yep.
The origins of the name, the Carrera Panamericana, Jack meaning the parents of the Rodriguez brothers, Sebring. These kind of tales we know. Of course, the connection to Scuderia Ferrari and timekeeping with Enzo, the sponsorship of the drivers, the precision timekeeping during this period, what design meant during this era. It was a very, very different way to manufacture and create watches. So understanding that element was interesting as well. But I think the kind of less known elements, the untimely death of the Carrera in 1984, where it was discontinued just in advance of TAG taking over, but then the rebirth in 1996 and what that event actually looked like. And we found some amazing pictures in the archive of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza in 1996, where Jack was presented with one of the first pieces by the management at the time and was really welcomed back into the business. So very, very powerful stories throughout, and amazing to see it as a platform for innovation under LVMH, micrograph, microgirder, of course plasma today, so lots to dig into.
Well, it seems to be becoming more and more important, and if I think back to like the last 5 years or so, especially with TAG Heuer as a brand really kind of diving in and embracing that heritage. I want to, and we've seen that really strongly come out in releases. I want to ask you about one of your big level ambassadors, Ryan Gosling. He famously is a pretty big vintage watch enthusiast. Has he been sort of paying a lot of attention to these reissues? Is he super into it?
I've had a little bit of time with Ryan along the way. It's interesting when you meet with him because he's been quite upfront that his taste is very classical. He's very focused on the idea of an object that is timeless. And of course that plays into the idea of course, vintage watches, but more interestingly, it plays into this idea of continuity that we've tried to embrace now. Throughout the history of Heuer and TAG Heuer, it's been very, very chopped up. We've not always had the same kind of continuous iteration within the product that some other model lines for other brands might have seen, but it's surrounded by many, many cars here. I mean, it's nice to reflect on Porsche and the 911, of course, also celebrating 60 years this year. When you look at the original 901 launched in 1963 versus a 2023 992, you can see the iterative steps that have taken place to get the 911 to where it is today. And that's really what we've tried to achieve with the new Carrera collection that we launched this year, was to reflect, okay, if the Carrera hadn't been discontinued for this period of time, and if it hadn't gone through these phases of going in like very tangential directions, what would it really look like? And I think not to be too much of a brand guy, I think when you look at the new 39mm glass box, it's really a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the reissues are really strong, and I want to know what in your opinion, differentiates between sort of hitting the mark on a heritage reissue and missing it? Because a lot of more brands miss than hit.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I've been on the record many times saying this, and I think everyone thinks I'm throwing shade at others, but I mean, I think it's certainly my genuine feeling.
Yep.
At the end of the day, if I walk into a boutique and I'm buying a new watch, I really do want a new watch. I don't want a laser scanned version of something that was launched 60 or 70 years ago that's been cranked out on another CNC machine. I want something that definitely takes the kind of philosophies and ideals of what the brand represents, what it stands for, but really updates it using modern technology. And we're lucky at TAG Heuer that obviously we have the Institute to work with, but we also have Cornell, Chauvenet, Articad to support us in the manufacturing and development process as well. And that allows us to dig into the archives, look at these amazing historic watches, but then create something that a contemporary consumer, not just the hardcore enthusiasts who we absolutely love, but also a broader market that allows watches to become more culturally relevant, which is extremely important right now. It's very easy for us to paint ourselves into a corner and only do what's been done before and appeal to a very small segment of the marketplace. But the more that we can share and kind of educate and introduce people to this amazing history around Swiss watchmaking, all the better.
Yeah, and I think that kind of meeting that middle ground between something that is new, that is modern, and it's the same as the 992, you know, things evolve over time. And I find fascinating with TAG Heuer is that there is that sort of chunk missing in history where there wasn't a whole lot done on it, and now it's a big focus, and it seems to be kind of going quite well. So I want to kind of pivot to a watch you mentioned before, the Skipper. Mm-hmm. This is under embargo right now, as I understand.
Only 1 week to go.
So. Only 1 week to go. So the Skipper's out in the future when this comes out.
Sure.
Where did the Skipper go?
Where did the Skipper go? So the funny thing about the Skipper is it didn't really exist that much in the first place. I think everyone forgets this fact that the original version, the reference 7754, launched in 1968, only exists for basically 1 year of production. It was launched to celebrate the victory of the Intrepid, the US entry into the America's Cup in 1967. And following on from that, we did release a few other variations, particularly in the Ortavia case, the compressor case to Ortavia, and then later the C-shaped case. We did automatic and manual winding versions. We had other connections to water and to sailing and to the ocean throughout the history of the brand. So, of course, 1949, we launched the Solunar and the Seafarer, partnership with Abercrombie & Fitch. This would evolve into the Solunograph, the Meriograph, under Heuer and Orvis branding. In the 1990s, we would see a partnership with the America's Cup, particularly Team Oracle. Other regatta countdown timers, we had specialized stopwatches in the 1970s as well. So we've always had this kind of connection to the ocean and sailing and these kind of things. In the modern era, it's not been a big focus for the brand, particularly whilst we're trying to understand who we are and what we stood for. Of course, motorsport is very, very dominant, but it's also worth reflecting on competition, timekeeping, and other avenues. And that, in a way, is sort of how we came back to it. Of course, we have to give credit to Hodinkee for their limited edition in 2017.
Bringing it back.
Smashed it out the park. You know, it launched at 5.5K. Nice to have a bit of ambient noise.
Yeah, we got something starting.
Something starting up. You know, that was a watch that launched. It was $6,000 US, something like this. You know, today in the secondary, US dollars. What's it in dollary dues? Like 8-9K, something like that. Today in the secondary market, it's probably 20K US, 30K Aussie, something like that. So clearly, and it was 125 pieces. We know there's massive demand for this watch. So it makes logical sense that we should take some inspiration from this piece, both the original from 68 and what Hodinkee achieved in 2017, to create something that it is available to everyone. It's going to be a core collection piece. It's going to be standard production. Okay, it's not going to be the easiest thing to find, same as the Black Monaco. I mean, I hope so. Let's hope that demand outstrips supply. But I think given the positive response we've had from the people we've shown it to, it looks pretty strong. Yeah,
and before we talk about the kind of the actual design and the looks, what I find interesting is it's a sailing watch, so a pretty niche reason, but like the watch industry doesn't really need too many excuses to release a watch for a category that's super niche. But you've mentioned it's sort of that short production time, that big splash Hodinkee made. What was involved in sort of the kind of bringing it back? Why did it come back?
The interesting thing about the Skipper, when you look at the version from 68, and I've got one of the originals downstairs, you imagine walking into your local friendly watch retailer in 68 and you would see a Black Dial Speedmaster, a Black Dial Daytona, maybe a Silver Dial Daytona. It was a very monochromatic landscape.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you end up with this thing that's like iridescent, sunburst, blue dial base, teal sub-dials with these red and white to make up the regatta countdown time. Is this bright orange hand. It had a colour that was like nothing else in the marketplace. I think Jeff Stein put it very nicely on a feature that he wrote, saying that this was really the embracing of like the swinging 60s, the modern fashion of the time, the use of color, this amazing post-war economic era where you have this amazing boom that gives rise to this kind of creativity and liveliness that unfortunately would disappear in the 70s with this kind of global recession. But it was a watch very much created of the era and created this massive impression. And what it means is that you have people coming from fashion backgrounds or other areas, and they recognize how unusual it is and how beautiful it is.
Yeah, and so I mean the vintage market for Heuer, in particular the Skipper, is super strong, and you do see a lot of collaborations and a lot of colour on those timepieces. Can you why do you think, aside from rarity, that sort of vintage market is so strong? And it's interesting to watch because it has remained really consistent over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and I think a lot of people thought it might, pop or explode or taper off, but it's sort of hit a level and has kind of maintained.
Yeah, I mean, we had this anomalous period in sort of 2017, 2018 where prices spiked strangely, let's say. But we can see the kind of true icons when we look at things like the first execution Otavia, the Skipper, the solid gold reference 1158 CHNs, screwback GMT Otavias, these very rare and historically important pieces, of course, the 1133B Monacos. All of those have kind of maintained strong prices for watches in good condition with clear provenance. So the black Monaco, I should not overlook that one, of course. Sorry, I won't mention too many of them, but there's a few strong examples. We've seen some of the more commodity stuff obviously have like spikes and drop off. Joseph or Otavia's went up to 20-25k, they're back down to sort of 10-12k, something like this. I think the thing that's really driven this is when we look at vintage watches, there's a couple of key qualities, right? First of all, you need clear, unquestionable provenance. You need a watch that was definitely born in that configuration. Not to you guys already discussed this, right? Anyway, so, no, I mean the first and foremost is I've put a big push on buying watches with very clear provenance. That we're talking about a watch that's come from the original owner, of the family of the original owner. We've got sworn letters, we've got photographs of this wearing them. That's point number one. Point number two is we can then do a kind of forensic analysis of the piece. We can use things like mass spectrometer analysis to confirm that the alloy of the metal that we're looking at is period correct. There's no trace of titanium that wouldn't exist in the 60s and 70s. We then need to, of course, look at the condition of the piece. And then beyond that, and once you've got these three kind of foundational blocks and you know what you're dealing with is true and correct, we can then talk about where it fits into the kind of history of watchmaking, the history of the brand. And that's where you get the kind of big variations of value. And that's what's made the Skipper so important, because, of course, it talks about our relationship to the US market, it talks about our relationship to competition, timekeeping and sport, talks about our connection to design and culture, which was, really a key part for Jack. When you have this kind of perfect storm of elements, then you end up with something of great value.
Yeah. Because you brought it up.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Has how you kind of procure watches for the museum changed in the last couple of months?
No.
So it's that same sort of methodology.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been fortunate to be, involved in collecting vintage watches for a very long time. At the end of the day, I'm not going to talk specifically about any situation more broadly, but what I will make is kind of sweeping statements. I think the fact is when you're involved in collecting watches and specifically vintage watches, who are the kind of the good actors and the bad actors. And I think it's, I'm going to reference an ambassador for another brand, but he's someone who I was lucky to spend quite a lot of time with. So Jackie Stewart once said to me, fly with the crows and you get shot. Fly with the eagles and no one can touch you. And the fact is, as long as you maintain a strong relationship and you align yourself with trusted individuals, you don't really run into these problems. So I'd like to think that I've gained a reputation of having a pretty clear moral compass and, very straightforward direction in how I acquire and how I do business. I've never been one of these guys to, if we have someone walk into the factory and they say, my dad had this watch, the dealer's offered me $2,000, do you want to buy it? And it turns out it's actually worth $30,000, which is exactly what happened with a gold Carrera reference 1158 CHN. The guy had been offered an absolute lowball price, and I said, look, here's the market price, here's the examples, I will pay you that price. Because the fact is, I like to be able to sleep at night. And it's very easy to make a quick buck, but at the end of the day, it's always going to come back and bite you on the ass. Bite.
Takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a moment to shatter it.
Right, that's a Young Ham Rupert quote, I think.
Look at us, just quoting people.
Everyone else.
He told me that directly. So TAG Heuer has had a really strong presence in Australia. It's a massive brand here. It's sort of, and it has been for 40, 50 years. Why do you think that is, as an outsider, coming to visit and getting to know the local clientele?
Yeah, it was interesting because when I was heading down, Van asked me to put together a presentation, which you'll see a bit of. And it was a question of why are TAG Heuer in Australia so closely aligned? And it was funny because when I was visiting previously, I didn't work for TAG, obviously, but I noticed an abnormally high number of people wearing TAG Heuer watches. And at the time I was, very much a Heuer guy, but I was surprised to see it. Normally you see a lot of Rolex, a lot of Omega, but proportionally there's a lot of TAG Heuer here.
Yep.
And so when I was coming for this visit, I thought, maybe I should think a bit more carefully about why that is the case. And I think there's easy things to talk about. Obviously the marketing message was very strong in the 1990s. It was a period where, kind of the global luxury market was growing. Yeah, that's a bit of it. But I think more importantly, philosophically, I think Australia culturally and TAG Heuer as a brand, we really, really resonate very well with each other. I always like to, of course, as a Brit, we have a great sporting rivalry between Australia and the UK in various forums. You guys are very competitive. You're very sporty. You believe in competition. And of course, when we're talking about competition, we're often talking about timekeeping. That was kind of how we built our very early reputation in the country. And that's really what TAG Heuer have stood for. So I think that's one key part of the alignment. But I think the other thing is this kind of duality of the brand. When you look at a watch like Carrera, yes, it's a tool watch, it's a utilitarian object, it's a sports watch, but at the same time, I always say you could wear the watch racing at Le Mans and then slip out of your driving suit, put on your dinner jacket and go to your gala dinner. And I think this idea, in Australia is quite important, that you have one watch that can kind of do everything. You can go to the beach wearing it, and then you can go out and, wear it pretty smartly. And I think with all of this combined, I think it's, well, you correct me if I'm wrong, because...
the thongs of wristwatches.
Wait.
Thong means a different thing here.
Oh,
that's
okay.
What is a sandal? It's a sandal.
Flip-flop.
Flip-flop. Yeah, Australians wear them everywhere.
I didn't know that, luckily.
It's not that type of thong. Okay, the Skipper. So, cat's out of the bag. It's new. It's back. Give me the 60-second hot lap.
Sure. 60 seconds. Let's see. So I talk too much anyway. So with this new glass box design, we're very lucky that we have the 39mm format, which has been very, very well received by enthusiasts and critics alike. We've used that as the foundation.
Yep.
It's still the new TH20 caliber that we're very proud of, but it's been slightly revised to allow for a 15-minute counter rather than a 30-minute counter, which is important for regatta timekeeping. But really the most obvious thing is the dial and the hands. That's where we've taken absolutely direct inspiration, drawing on the colorways from the historic piece, and introducing it into this new glass box format. So quite fetching.
Good take. Felix, how are we going for time?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Am I getting... Time's okay? All right. Well, why don't I ask one more question?
Sure.
We'll ask you every time. Recommendation that has come to you on your journey over to Australia or whilst you're here?
Well, unfortunately, I've had very little downtime whilst I'm here. I was lucky enough to have a little short stroll to the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge whilst I was in Sydney. Tomorrow, actually, I do have a little bit more, so I'm going to go to the NVG, is it? The
National Gallery of Victoria.
Yeah, NGV, yeah. So I'm going to go and stop by and check out the exhibition there, so I'm pretty excited to go and see that. I think that's
it. That's your ride. Amazing. Thank you so much.
I really liked the ambient background noise of dudes moving cars.
Yeah, the Ferrari's just revving, signaling the time's up.
Was that what you sort of ended? You ended it on like the you took that as a cue to end when they started powering up the mighty V12s.
Yeah, Nicholas is a guy, every time we have him on, every time you chat to him, you just keep going. But I feel like you kind of want to leave some in the tank.
And you did. You had little offline chats. You went away. We
went for
You disappeared for an hour afterwards.
We went.
Who knows what you did?
the camera roll came out. He showed me some pics he took at a party.
Oh, I saw those pics too.
Yeah, watch industry party. That was pretty cool. Chatted cars. He's a great guy. He's the TAG Heuer, genuinely lucky to have him.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. So thank you to TAG Heuer for that opportunity. As always, thanks Artem Straps for sponsoring us again. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for buying phones with podcast apps.
Yeah, make sure you're on Discord. It's just a fun place to be. Make sure you're telling your friends and family about the show, sharing it, tagging us on social media, all that fun stuff. You know where to email us and DM us if you need. We will see you next week.
Peace.